through them.
Let's run through. So first fight of the evening.
Your mate.
On debutant, yeah.
How do you say his name? This one's difficult.
Denilson, from what I understand. And I do apologise to anybody whose names.
Who are you apologising to?
I'm not exactly sure. And just for that young man as well, I did ask prior to, and it was a busy room, obviously, and a little bit difficult to hear. And I perhaps heard his name as Denilson, but it was made clear to me afterwards it was Denilson or Denilson is how it's to be pronounced. And so we got Denilson Coelho, I believe. Now Coelho, what was
I thought you just said, and welcome the Karate Kid.
Danielson. But Denilson, it was interesting because it was from his own team. So he'd backed himself, and
what does that tell you?
Well, it's
when you're from your own team.
Well, it's either you're a genius or you might need a team. So one of those two things. But from what I understand, young fellow, boxing background, decided to throw his hat in the ring, so to speak, and to give MMA a go. And there's a lot of people that do cross over from other combat sports to make their way into MMA, maybe underestimate the rigours of MMA and the various disciplines that are required outside of just a stand-up. And
I love the way he's politically putting this just beautifully. Very respectful.
Yeah. Basically saying he's a boxer without the experience of MMA going into
it. Well, I think that's pretty much what it was.
You're such an asshole.
So he's a young boxer. And you know what? I can completely understand as well, because there's not a lot of fighting going on anywhere in Australia right now, and it's really difficult to get your name on any card. Yeah. And for a fighter who's just looking for a fight, he really more power to him. Yeah, absolutely. So he jumped in the ring and did that one go pretty much as you foresaw?
It did.
And what were some of the tells leading into that kind of led you to feel that way?
I suppose, to be honest, like as a commentator, I actually try not to and don't want to be one-sided. I don't want to hate one guy and love another. And if I do, I'm got it.
You got to balance.
Maybe I should try harder. But I've got to try and, of course, respect fighters who you may not personally like or whatever, but and be respectful. But you got to try and tell a positive story rather than a negative one about anybody. But there was that background in trying to research Denilson a little bit that he's. We are all from an all-round mixed martial arts background, and I think there's a certain amount of respect in the community that there's a bar, a level of this is what we're about. We're not about one thing. We're about everything. And the old Bruce Lee said, "What works?" Yeah. So if you come from that one background and you think it's going to, we've seen it many, many times in lots of different competitions through Australian MMA from time to time when somebody tries that. Most of the time, it obviously doesn't work out. For this person, I tried to do research, couldn't find much on him, but there was some interesting stuff on Facebook about Denilson. I think he was at one point with the Morfett Vale Boxing Club, and some of his mates from the club I got on the club site,
you really dig deep?
Yeah. So I'd see what they're saying about him, and good and bad. There was both good and bad comments on the site. I'm like, oh, this is interesting.
Ooh, juicy. We're onto something now. All right.
Yeah, which is crazy because, if I was fighting, I wouldn't want my mates saying maybe bad things about me because they were mates. And they were saying, like half of the comments were like, dude, you're crazy. What are you doing? Where has this come from? Which to me is...
it's a tell.
Some warning signals there about, hey, what's going on? And then the other half were saying, here comes the Morfett Vale McGregor.
Okay.
First round knockout.
Hey.
So it was going to be one of two ways, and I think it was going to be extreme either way. It wasn't going to be a nice even fight that went 3 rounds, a possibly decision. I didn't think so. I was looking for that to finish. I thought it obviously would finish by being taken down and finished in whatever way on the ground.
Having the striking background rather than having much of a ground game, that's how you felt it was going to go.
Why would you? If you're going to fight somebody and you can beat them,
box.
This one didn't go that way, did it? It didn't go to the ground at all.
It didn't. Good old Dean Mccrohan from Element. When I interviewing Dean, I'm like, okay, I'm going to ask you the most stupid question ever. And if I was your coach, I would be telling you to take this guy down immediately, maybe throw a big overhand right, change levels, double leg, and, get top position. Maybe soften him up and get him to turn old Gracie school style to the back. Rear naked choke.
UFC 2. UFC 2 style.
Watch those old Gracie videos, you know what I'm talking about, right? Look, these guys, they don't know how to defend a rear naked choke. They don't know what it's like. They think they're going to be okay. And that's what I said to him, obviously that's what you should do. Is that what your coach has told you to do? And what are you going to do? And he goes, no, I'm not. I'm like, you're crazy, but good. And he stood and traded strikes. Denilson actually, the boxer actually threw some kicks and showed a little bit more than just boxing. Didn't come out with a pure boxing stance, but he did end up getting copped a few really good leg kicks.
Just didn't have the defence on the legs, so he wasn't sure how to protect himself.
You know what it's like when you copped your first ever leg kick?
It's horrible.
I'm
still recovering.
I tapped a leg kick in training. I wouldn't come back for the second round. Like, you idiot. But I'm like, no, that was brutal. You can't stand up because you're just not used to taking these. And after the first or second, it was obvious. He didn't have that poker face. The pain was, clear. And I think at one of them, he swept himself all the way around with one of the kicks and almost hit the ground. After about the 6th or 7th, he did hit the floor. It knocked him, and he could not stand. It actually was embarrassing, I think, a little bit for him that he couldn't defend that. And so it was a TKO by leg kick, which is great to see. I love it. Punishment by leg kick.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Brutal.
Absolutely. You see it coming. It's like an accumulation of strikes. Yeah. And it's like every one that lands, it's like, ooh, is this going to be the one that puts him down? And then it's like, no, but he's worse than he was a second ago.
The great thing was for us and for any fight fan is to see Dean Mccrohan make that decision of I'm going to target it. The fight changed from that point. As soon as he started targeting, and then it became a game. It was just interesting of how many
upstairs. And
it was like every 2 seconds I'll throw another one. It wasn't like this 30 seconds later I'll throw the 3 other combinations and then I'll come back to it. Yeah. No, it was just like, okay, yeah. You can't stand on it. Bang, bang, bang.
Absolutely. Have you seen Mariusz Pudzianowski, World's Strongest Man? He got into MMA, and his very first fight, same thing. He threw a leg kick and it landed. And you see him excited, and it hurt the dude. And then he literally ran after the guy around the ring, kicking him in the leg about 15 times, like just no other strikes. Other dudes running away, and it's just leg kick, until he went down. It was like, this is hilarious, one of the best things ever. But that expression on his face when he landed it, another dude was like, oh, he's like, oh, and he's just like chasing you with leg kicks.
I think it was it Aldo who really changed the game in the UFC in terms of
with Uriah Faber.
With some dude. Did you see Uriah's legs the next day?
Yeah, I watched that video last week again. Yeah, well, his leg was swelled up like twice the size.
Shot in the backyard with the shorts on.
Yeah, and the crutches. Yeah,
I love you, Matt. You're like it's my brother from another. Who is your brother?
just in case.
Aldo didn't finish the fight. Sorry, I know we've got to get through.
I know we're like 11 more fights.
I could see the look of it.
It's like I'm going to be here till 11 o'clock tonight. All right.
We'll make this a 10-part series.